All right, there's one. There's one right there. I'm gonna drop my power poles. I just spotted a fish on a bed. Now, you can't see that fish. You know, we're not gonna attempt to try to let you see that fish, but reading bass on a bed is very, very important if you're trying to catch fish off a bed. Bedding bass, it confuses a lot of people. We're gonna talk about how to read those fish. I'm gonna walk you through a couple different scenarios, what we're looking at. Number one, you need a good pair of polarized sunglasses. This is number one key. Yes, you can, different, you know, color shades may help you see a little bit more. Number one is make sure that they're polarized. That is a big deal. Polarized sunglasses can help you see. Once you're able to see what's going on in the water, you got to understand what's happening. You got a male bass that comes into the bed, fans out the bed, and that's what that usually you'll see a light spot. Sometimes it'll actually be dark. Sometimes it's a sandy bottom, and the fish fanning out the sand actually exposes a darker bottom. So you may have a dark spot. More than likely, it's a light spot that male bass is going to fan out. That male bass is going to service multiple females throughout the spawning season. Most male bass, on average, stay on a bed area for about 30 days. For about a month, you're going to see that male bass. So when somebody says they're spawning and it's only a week long, that's not exactly accurate. The male bass, on average, stay about a month. So you'll have some that stay 2 or 3 weeks. Then you'll have some that stay 6 or 7 weeks on the same bed or on a bed. So that's the first thing that you want to realize. So the females are going to come in and get paired up with those males. The males are going to entice them, push them to try to get them to come into their bed. The females know what they need to do. They know they need to get into that bed, and the males will you know, push them and try to get them to get into that bed and say, hey girl, this is my spot right here. Once she figures out, okay, this is his bed, then they get to having their action. The females, they usually stay there 1 to 3 days. I've seen females stay as long as 5 or 6 days. That's kind of odd and kind of rare. But in some areas, like if you're talking about Texas or even Florida, you'll have male bass that'll be 4 and even 5 pounds. So just because you see a 4 or 5 pounder in a bed doesn't mean that that's necessarily a female. That could be just a big male. I've caught plenty of those in Texas, 4 to 5 pound males. Love those because they're usually aggressive, but sometimes they can get a little, after they've been caught once or twice, they can get a little tricky, you know what I'm saying? But when you pull up to the bed and you look and you see that bass, let's say you see a fish and you see a 3 pounder. You don't know whether that's a male or a female. You've seen that, you see the light spot. A lot of times the fish will be sitting in the light spot. As soon as you come closer, that fish will move off, and that's when you begin to watch it. How territorial is that bass to that bed and to that area? If he's very territorial, they won't leave the bed for almost anything. Look, you can almost hit them in the head with a trolling motor and they won't leave. I've seen it happen plenty of times. Usually they're somewhere in between. Sometimes you'll see a bed way off in the distance and you'll see a fish, you know, you get the light just right and you'll see a fish sitting in it. As soon as you can see that bed over there, you'll see that bass ease off. That bass has probably been caught. It's very spooky, but most of them are somewhere in between. Most of them are not super spooky, but you can't knock them off the bed. So you have to read how territorial that fish is on the bed. That's the first thing that you're going to do. If he leaves the bed, how quickly does he come back? How quickly does he come back? If I have my best option, I always like to get to where the sun is at my back. So that allows for the best light penetration going in the direction that I'm looking. It makes you have more of a shadow and not so bright. If you're going into the sun and looking, a lot of times you have a glare to deal with, and the front of your boat and you standing up is just lit up like a Christmas tree, no matter what color you're wearing. Just very bright. You're going to be very, very bright to the fish. I think he can see every one of your little movements. If you get around to where the sun's at your back, you're a little more shady. Your moves are not as amplified. I think that's a good thing to do when you're trying to catch those fish off a bed. So you're reading how aggressive and how quickly that fish comes back to the bed. Most of the time, I'll wait a minute or two before I throw anything in that bed once I'm visually looking at the bass. The other thing I look for is if I see one fish, I'm looking to see do I see a female or do I see a male? So if I see that 3-pounder, do I look and I see a little 12-incher? That's probably the male and that 3-pounder's a female. Or am I looking to where I see that 3-pounder and then all of a sudden 10 feet out, I'm seeing a 6 or 7-pounder. So I know that's the male, that's the female. First things first, you gotta, are you just fun fishing? Are you just fishing in a tournament? That's kind of, you know, what are you gonna catch first? If you're just fun fishing, you can catch the male first and then put him back. He'll go right to the back to the bed, and then you can work on trying to catch the female. Sometimes you'll catch the male multiple times in, you know, a 30-45 minute period. So those males, they get aggressive. If you catch them at the right time, you can absolutely catch them multiple times in one day. But if you can catch that male once or twice, get to where he won't bite, then you can try to work on the female, see if she'll get territorial. Like I said, those females don't get in the bed for a super long period of time. So when they are there, they're usually not mega hard to catch if they're in the right mood. If they're not in the right mood, sometimes you can work on them and, you know, you throw baits around them and try to get them to bite. But it can be a little more difficult and a little more time consuming, because when you roll up to that bed, you roll up to that fish, your objective is to, if they're not in a very territorial mood, you want to change their mood. It might take 5 minutes, it might take 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. You're going to try to change their mood, make them mad, if you will. You know, make them mad, try to change their mood, and try to get them territorial to where they're going to bite your lure. And so when we're talking about lure choice, small, medium, large, I'm going to have a drop shot with like a little Missile Baits bomb shot, little small bait. Probably have a medium-sized bait like a baby D-bomb, and then a big bait like a Missile Baits destroyer, big creature bait. So just have some, small, medium, and large. I usually start with the medium or the large, throw it in there, see how the bass respond. A lot of bass are very spooky about lures flying over their heads. So at best, try to cast as far as you can past that fish, reel your bait up to where the fish is, and then slowly work it into the bed. Sometimes you'll leave it for as long as 30, 45 seconds, even a minute. You'll just be leaving that bait sitting still and see how those fish react to it. One of the first things on your first couple casts, you want to see if the fish acknowledges your bait. That's a big key. If you throw in there and they could care less that you threw that bait in there, they don't look at it, you think, you're like, daggone, that fish is blind, he didn't even see my bait, I threw it in there, I made 3 or 4 casts, he never even acknowledged it, or she. That's not a good sign. Not a good sign. You want to make sure if you throw in there and that fish turns and looks at your bait, that's a good sign. You can probably catch that fish. The fish looked at it, recognized it. Now it's just a matter of trying to find what spot that they want that bait, and do they want small, medium, or large. Sometimes you can throw medium enough to change their mood and make them bite it. Sometimes you can throw the large one in there. Sometimes you'll work the fish and kind of get them a little mad. Then you throw the drop shot in there, they eat it first cast. So just make sure you mix in those baits. Try to read those fish. Make sure that you put them back immediately if you're not in a tournament situation, so that they can have a good successful spawn. Even if you are in a tournament situation, as long as there's plenty of shoreline cover, their survival rate for the bass will be plenty. There's all kinds of studies to prove that. So if you have any other comments or questions, drop them down there. I'll try to answer them, try to do my best. But reading bass on beds is something I love to do. I think it's a lot of fun. Sorry that it was just such a long conversation that we just had on how to read the bass, but I love it. I could talk about it all day. I could do it all day. I could do it for days and days in a row. So get out there. If you've not done it or you're a little inexperienced, get out there, hopefully take some of the tips that you learned here, go out there, and then be sure if you have any other questions or comments or anything you want to add to what I just said, please drop it down there, and I'll be glad to try to answer that, or we can at least all learn from what you said. Thanks.